The coffee maker gurgled its usual morning greeting as Sarah Chan pressed her palm against the cool kitchen window. Outside, the streets of downtown Portland stretched empty and gray beneath the October drizzle. Too empty for a Wednesday morning. Her phone buzzed for the 14th time in 3 minutes. She'd been ignoring the notifications while trying to convince herself that everything was normal, that she was still living in the world she'd woken up to yesterday. But the messages kept coming, each one chipping away at that fragile illusion. Stay inside. Lock your doors. Mom. Sarah, are you seeing this? Call me immediately. Marcus. Emergency broadcast says don't go outside. This is real. Jenna. Sarah's hand trembled as she finally unlocked her phone. The screen flooded with alerts, news notifications, and messages from friends and family. She tapped on the first news alert, and her stomach dropped. Breaking: CDC declares national emergency, unknown illness causing aggressive behavior, authorities advise shelter in place. The video autoplayed. A shaky phone camera captured a scene in what looked like downtown Seattle. People running. Screaming. And others, moving wrong, jerking forward with unnatural determination, chasing the runners with single-minded focus. Sarah dropped the phone on the counter, her breath catching in her throat. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen in real life. They happened in movies, in books, in late-night stories people told to scare each other. Not in Portland. Not on a random Wednesday morning when she was supposed to be heading to work at the graphic design studio. She picked up the phone again and dialed her mother's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried her father. Same result. Her younger brother Tommy, voicemail. Come on, she whispered, trying Marcus next. On the 4th ring, he answered. Sarah. Thank God. Are you home? Yes, I'm in my apartment. Marcus, what's happening? Those videos. It's spreading, Marcus interrupted, his voice tight with fear. Started in Seattle yesterday, but nobody took it seriously. Thought it was some kind of flash mob or mass hysteria thing. But Sarah, it's here now. It's in Portland. My neighbor, Mr. Chin, not related to you, he got sick this morning. I saw him through my window. He wasn't right. Then he attacked Mrs. Rodriguez from 3B. Sarah's legs felt weak. She pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down hard. Is she okay? I don't know. The paramedics came, but then they stopped coming. The sirens stopped about an hour ago. Marcus paused, and she could hear him breathing heavily. Sarah, I need you to listen to me. Lock every door and window. Fill your bathtub with water. Grab all the food you can and put it in one room. This isn't going to blow over quickly. How do you know? Because I've been watching the news channels, the social media feeds, everything. This is happening in every major city on the West Coast. Whatever this is, it's spreading fast, and the people who get sick, they don't get better. They just become. Don't say it, Sarah whispered. But Marcus said it anyway. Zombies, Sarah. I know how it sounds, but that's what they are. The infection or virus or whatever it is, it shuts down everything human and leaves behind something that just wants to spread it to others. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to process information her brain kept rejecting. My family. I can't reach any of them. Where are they? Mom and Dad were visiting Tommy at college. University of Oregon. Eugene's probably hit too, Marcus said quietly. But your parents are smart. They'll find somewhere safe. Right now, you need to focus on keeping yourself alive. Are you listening to me, Sarah? She nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. Yes. Good. Lock down. I'm doing the same. We'll get through this. After Marcus hung up, Sarah sat in her kitchen for a full minute, staring at nothing. Then survival instinct kicked in, and she moved. She lived in a fourth-floor apartment in the Pearl District, relatively defensible, she thought, though she'd never imagined having to think in those terms before. She went to the front door first, engaging the deadbolt and the chain lock. Then she moved through the apartment, checking every window lock, pulling curtains closed. In the bathroom, she jammed the drain stopper into the tub and turned on both faucets full blast. While the tub filled, she inventoried her kitchen. 2 cans of soup. 1 box of pasta. Half a jar of sauce. Peanut butter. Crackers. Some granola bars. Maybe a week's worth of food if she rationed carefully. Her hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against the counter and forced herself to breathe slowly. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. The technique her therapist had taught her for managing anxiety. A scream cut through the morning air. Sarah froze. It had come from outside, from the street below. She moved to the living room window and carefully pulled the curtain aside just enough to peek out. What she saw would haunt her forever. A woman in a business suit ran down the middle of the street, her heels clicking frantically on the asphalt. Her hair had fallen loose from its professional bun, whipping behind her as she ran. She kept looking back over her shoulder at the 3 figures pursuing her. They had been people once. Sarah could see that. One wore the remains of a security guard uniform. Another was dressed in jogging clothes. The third looked like it might have been a teenager. But the way they moved, it was all wrong. They ran with a lurching, determined gait, arms reaching forward, mouths open. Even from 4 stories up, even through the closed window, Sarah could hear the sounds they made. Low moans mixed with something that sounded almost like growling. The businesswoman stumbled, caught herself, kept running. She was heading toward the coffee shop on the corner, the one Sarah went to every morning. The owner, Mike, appeared in the doorway, waving frantically. "Come on. Hurry." The woman put on a desperate burst of speed. She was going to make it. Sarah found herself pressing against the window, silently urging her forward. 10 feet from the door. 5 feet. The woman dove through the entrance, and Mike slammed the door behind her, immediately turning the lock. The 3 infected people crashed against the glass door seconds later, their hands slapping and clawing at the surface. Sarah's stomach turned. She backed away from the window, her hand over her mouth. This was real. This was actually happening. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Jenna. "Are you watching the news? They're saying don't let anyone in. Even if they look normal. The infection can take hours to show." Sarah turned on her television. Every channel showed the same thing: emergency broadcasts, shaky footage from phones and security cameras, news anchors struggling to maintain composure as they reported on the impossible. Confirmed cases now in every major metropolitan area on the West Coast, a reporter was saying, her eyes wide with barely controlled panic. The CDC is advising everyone to remain indoors, avoid contact with anyone showing symptoms of the infection, which include fever, aggressive behavior, and, she paused, swallowing hard, an apparent loss of higher brain function. The channel switched to footage from a news helicopter. It showed downtown Seattle, and Sarah's breath caught. The streets were chaos. Cars abandoned at odd angles. Fires burning in several buildings. And people, both kinds of people, running, chasing, struggling. "Authorities are asking everyone to remain calm," the reporter continued, but her voice cracked on the last word. "The National Guard has been deployed in several cities, in." The broadcast cut to static, then to a test pattern, then to a pre-recorded message showing the emergency broadcast symbol. Sarah flipped through channels. Half of them were already off the air. The ones still broadcasting showed similar scenes of confusion and fear. She turned off the TV and sat in the sudden silence of her apartment. The only sound was the water still running in the bathtub. She got up to turn it off, her movements mechanical, her mind trying to catch up with the new reality. The tub was nearly full. She shut off the faucets and stared at the water. Marcus had been right to tell her to do this. If the water treatment plant stopped working, this could be the difference between life and death. A thump came from above her, from Mr. Patterson's apartment. He was elderly, lived alone, mostly kept to himself. Sarah looked up at the ceiling, listening. Another thump. Then dragging sounds, like furniture being moved. She grabbed a broom and used the handle to tap on the ceiling, 3 quick raps. "Mr. Patterson? Are you okay?" Silence. Then 3 taps in response. Relief flooded through her. At least she wasn't alone in the building. She tapped again, a rhythm this time, tap tap, tap tap. The rhythm came back to her. He was okay. He understood what was happening. Sarah pulled out her phone and created a group text with Marcus, Jenna, and her family members. "I'm locked down at home. Everyone check in. Mom, Dad, Tommy, please respond when you can. I love you all." Marcus responded immediately, secure. "Got enough supplies for 2 weeks. Stay strong, Sarah." Jenna, scared but safe. "My roommate and I are boarding up windows." Her family, nothing. She tried calling again. Still voicemail. "They're fine," she told herself out loud, needing to hear it. "They're just in a dead zone or the networks are overloaded. They're fine." She didn't believe herself, but saying it helped anyway. As daylight faded, the sounds from outside changed. The screams became less frequent but more desperate. The moaning grew louder, more constant. Sarah sat in her darkened living room, afraid to turn on lights that might draw attention to her window. She'd pushed her couch against the door, knowing it wouldn't stop anyone really determined to get in, but needing the psychological comfort of an extra barrier. Her kitchen knife lay on the coffee table next to her phone, flashlight, and the portable radio she'd dug out of a closet. The radio mostly broadcast static now, but occasionally she'd catch fragments of emergency broadcasts. The message was always the same: stay inside, avoid contact, help was coming. But Sarah was beginning to doubt that last part. Around 8 p.m., the power went out. The sudden darkness was absolute and terrifying. Sarah grabbed the flashlight and clicked it on, the beam cutting through the blackness of her apartment. Her heart hammered in her chest. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's probably just the grid being overwhelmed. It'll come back on." But what if it didn't? What if this was it? What if the infrastructure was collapsing, and she was alone in a 4th-floor apartment with a week's worth of food and a bathtub full of water that wouldn't be replenished? She forced herself to think practically. Inventory what she had. Plan for what came next. Flashlight, check. She had one more in the emergency kit, plus some candles. Food, minimal, but enough for now. Water, the bathtub, plus 2 bottles in the fridge and a pitcher of filtered water. Weapons, just the kitchen knife. She'd never owned anything else, never imagined needing to defend herself in her own home. Information, the battery-powered radio, her phone as long as the charge lasted, though the cell networks were getting increasingly unreliable. She was making a written list by flashlight when she heard a sound in the hallway outside her apartment. Footsteps. Slow and dragging. Sarah killed the flashlight immediately, plunging herself back into darkness. She held her breath, listening. The footsteps stopped outside her door. She could see the shadow blocking the thin line of light, moonlight, maybe, or emergency lighting from the hallway, under her door. Something was standing right there, just a few feet and a thin piece of wood away from her. A scratching sound. Fingernails against the door. Sarah bit her lip to keep from making a sound. She reached out slowly in the darkness, her fingers finding the handle of the kitchen knife. The doorknob rattled. Whoever, whatever, was out there was testing it. The lock held. The chain held. The deadbolt held. After what felt like an eternity, the shadow moved away. The footsteps continued down the hall, toward the stairwell at the end. Sarah waited another 10 minutes before she dared to breathe normally again. Her whole body was shaking, adrenaline flooding her system with nowhere to go. She turned the flashlight back on, keeping it pointed at the floor, the beam dim through her fingers. She needed to see something, anything, to remind herself where she was, that she was still alive, still safe. The night crawled by. Sarah dozed fitfully on the couch, waking at every sound. And there were many sounds, things scraping, bumping, moving through the building and the streets outside. Occasionally, screams. Once, gunshots, far away. She checked her phone obsessively. Still nothing from her family. The battery was down to 60%. She turned it off to conserve power, then turned it back on 5 minutes later, unable to stand the disconnection. Marcus sent a message at 2 a.m. "You awake?" "Yes," Sarah typed back immediately. "Crazy night. Heard something trying to get in the building. Stopped after a while. You okay?" "Something tried my door. It left." "Marcus, I'm scared." "Me too. But we're going to get through this. Try to sleep. We'll need our strength. Have you heard from anyone else?" "Jenna checked in an hour ago." "Everyone else, no. Networks are getting worse." "Sarah, we should establish a check-in time. Noon every day. If we can't get through by phone, we'll try text. If that doesn't work, we'll try again at 6 p.m. Okay?" "Okay. That's good. That's a plan. Plans are what keep us human. Get some rest." Sarah did try to sleep after that, and somewhere around 4 in the morning, exhaustion finally won over fear. She woke to daylight streaming through the gaps in her curtains and the sound of helicopters overhead. For one blissful moment, she forgot where she was and what was happening. Then reality crashed back, and she sat up, every muscle in her body aching from sleeping on the couch in tension. Her phone showed 9:47 a.m. and no new messages. She checked the news apps, but most wouldn't load. The ones that did showed outdated information, articles from yesterday about the emerging crisis. Sarah went to the window and carefully looked out. The street below was empty now. No runners, no chasers. Just abandoned cars and debris scattered across the pavement. The coffee shop's door hung open, the glass cracked. She couldn't see inside. The helicopter passed overhead again, and she craned her neck to watch it. Military, from the look of it. It headed south, toward the river. A sound from within the building made her turn. Footsteps above her, Mr. Patterson's apartment. Then the rhythmic tapping. Tap tap, tap tap. Sarah grabbed the broom and tapped back. It had become their system. 2 taps, pause, 2 taps. It meant, "I'm alive, I'm okay, I'm still here." She wished she could talk to him properly, but going into the hallway seemed too dangerous. The thing that had tried her door last night might still be in the building. Instead, she focused on survival tasks. She ate a granola bar for breakfast, allowing herself exactly 1 bar and a glass of water. She needed to ration. Who knew how long this would last? She used the bathroom, then realized with dismay that without power, she couldn't flush properly. The tank would refill once, maybe twice, and then she'd have to figure something out. Use the water from the tub? But that was drinking water. So many things she'd never thought about before, never had to consider. By noon, she had the radio on, cycling through stations. Most were dead air. A few had emergency broadcasts on loop. One, miraculously, had a live person. "Day 3 of the crisis," a man's voice said, rough with exhaustion. "This is Dave Henderson, broadcasting from an undisclosed location. If anyone's listening, here's what we know. The infection is transmitted through fluid contact, bites, scratches, any exchange of bodily fluids. Symptoms begin within hours and progress rapidly. Once turned, the infected seem to lose all higher cognitive function but retain basic motor skills and a drive to spread the infection. Sarah turned up the volume, grabbing a pen to take notes. The military has established safe zones in some areas, but access is limited. They're prioritizing essential personnel and families with children. If you're sheltering in place, stay there. The streets are not safe. Infected are attracted to sound and movement. They don't seem to need food or water, at least not yet. They just keep going. A pause, and Sarah heard the man take a shaky breath. Power grids are failing in most cities. Water treatment plants are operating on emergency protocols where they're still staffed, but that won't last. If you have water, protect it. If you don't, rainwater can be boiled and purified. Food, scavenge if you must, but only in groups, only in daylight, and only if you're certain of your route and escape plan. Another pause. To anyone listening, you're not alone. There are survivors everywhere, good people trying to help each other. Find them. Band together. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to cooperate, to support each other. Don't lose that. Don't let this thing take our humanity along with everything else. Static crackled, and then the voice was gone. Sarah sat back, her notes clutched in her hand. 3 days. It had only been 3 days, and the world had fallen apart. Her phone alarm went off, noon. Check-in time. She texted Marcus, checking in. I'm okay. You? 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Sarah's anxiety spiked. He was supposed to respond. That was the plan. 20 minutes. Her phone showed the message as delivered but not read. She was about to try calling when the response came, here. Sorry, had to deal with something. Still secure. Relief washed over her. Jenna? Marcus, haven't heard from her since last night. Keep trying. Sarah sent a message to Jenna. No response. She sent one to her parents and Tommy, knowing it was futile but unable to stop herself. The afternoon dragged on. She organized her supplies, refolded her clothes, did bodyweight exercises to keep her muscles from atrophying and her mind from spiraling. Anything to stay busy, stay focused, stay sane. Around 4 p.m., she heard voices in the street. Sarah rushed to the window. Below, a group of people, living people, moving normally, were making their way down the street, carrying backpacks and supplies. 6 of them, moving quickly but carefully, checking corners and doorways. One of them, a woman with short dark hair, looked up. Her eyes met Sarah's through the window. Sarah's hand lifted in an automatic wave. The woman gestured urgently, pointing at Sarah, then at the building, then making a motion like turning a key in a lock. She wanted in. They wanted shelter. Sarah's mind raced. 6 people. 6 strangers. The radio had said to band together, that cooperation was humanity's strength. But the texts had said not to trust anyone, that infection could take hours to show. What if one of them was infected? What if they were dangerous for other reasons? 6 people could easily overpower her, take her supplies, take her shelter. But what if they were just scared survivors like her? What if they needed help? What if turning them away was condemning them to death? The woman gestured again, more urgently. Behind the group, at the far end of the street, movement caught Sarah's eye. Infected, 3 of them, shambling around the corner. The group saw them too. They were moving faster now, heading for Sarah's building entrance. Sarah had seconds to make a choice that could determine whether she lived or died. She grabbed her keys and ran to the door, pushing the couch aside. Her hands shook as she undid the locks. This was insane. This was the opposite of every survival instinct screaming in her head. But leaving people to die when she could help, that wasn't survival. That was something else, something that would eat away at her soul. She opened her apartment door and looked down the hallway. Empty. The emergency exit sign provided the only light in the windowless corridor. She could hear sounds from outside the building now, the group at the main entrance, trying the locked door. Sarah ran for the stairwell, taking the steps two at a time down to the ground floor. The main entrance was a glass door with a security lock that required a key fob or a code. The group was outside, and the infected were getting closer. She could see them through the glass, maybe 50 feet away now. The woman who'd looked up at her was at the front. "Please," she shouted through the glass. "We're not sick. Please." Sarah looked at them, really looked. A middle-aged couple holding hands. A young man, maybe college-aged, with a baseball bat. An older woman with gray hair and fierce eyes. Another man, broad-shouldered, carrying a crowbar. And the dark-haired woman who'd spotted her. Normal people. Scared people. The infected were 30 feet away. Sarah made her decision. She punched in the code, and the lock clicked open. The group poured through, and the broad-shouldered man immediately helped Sarah push a nearby lobby chair against the door. It wouldn't hold forever, but it might slow down anything trying to follow. "Thank you," the dark-haired woman gasped, breathing hard. "Thank you so much. We've been on the street since yesterday. I'm Elena. This is my sister Maria, her husband Carlos, my son David, and our friends Frank and Patricia." Sarah nodded at each of them, her heart still hammering. "Sarah. I'm in 4B. But we need to move. Those things know we're here now." "Fourth floor is good," Frank said, his voice a low rumble. "Harder for them to reach. Can't climb well, from what we've seen." They made their way up the stairs, Sarah in the lead. She was hyper-aware of every sound behind her, every movement in her peripheral vision. What had she done? She'd let 6 strangers into her building, knew nothing about them except that they were running from infected. But when she glanced back, she saw the older woman, Patricia, helping Maria up the stairs. Saw David looking back nervously, baseball bat ready to defend the group. Saw Elena's grateful eyes. Maybe she'd made the right choice. Maybe. They reached the 4th floor, and Sarah led them to her apartment. It looked so small with 7 people in it. "Everyone, stop," Frank said, his voice calm but authoritative. "Before we go any further, we need to establish some things. Sarah, you saved us. This is your place, your rules. But we need to know we're all safe. Elena, show her." Elena nodded and rolled up her sleeves, then lifted her pant legs. "No bites, no scratches. We've been checking each other every few hours. It's the only way to be sure." One by one, the others did the same, showing their arms, legs, necks, any exposed skin. Sarah saw no marks, no signs of infection. "Your turn," Patricia said gently to Sarah. "We need to know too. You understand." Sarah did understand. She showed them her unmarked skin, and the tension in the room eased slightly. "Okay," Frank said. "Now, resources. What do we have?" They pooled their supplies on Sarah's small dining table. 3 bottles of water. A loaf of bread. Some canned goods. A first aid kit. Batteries. A second flashlight. Some rope. 2 knives besides Sarah's. The baseball bat and crowbar. And information. Stories of what they'd seen, where they'd been, what they'd learned. "The infection is everywhere," Carlos said, his accent thick with stress. "We were at home in Beaverton when it started. Tried to drive into the city to reach Maria's mother, but the highways are blocked. Abandoned cars, accidents, infected everywhere. We had to go on foot. We joined up with them near Providence Park," Elena added. "Safety in numbers. We saw what happens when people are alone. It's not good." "What about the military? The safe zones?" Sarah asked. Frank shook his head. "Overrun or inaccessible. We passed by one being set up at the convention center. It was chaos. Too many people, not enough organization. And then infected got in somehow, and... He trailed off, his expression grim. David, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. What about your radio? We heard a broadcast yesterday. Someone named Dave, giving information. I heard him too, a few hours ago, Sarah said. He said to shelter in place, work together. Smart man, Patricia said. She moved to the window and carefully looked out. This building is defensible. 4 stories, solid construction, only 2 entrances, front and back, I assume? Sarah nodded. We should secure the back entrance too, Frank said. And do a sweep of the building. See if there are other survivors, check for infected that might have gotten in. Mr. Patterson, Sarah said suddenly. In 5B, directly above me. He's alive. We've been tapping to each other. Anyone else you know of? I don't know. I mostly kept to myself. Sarah felt a flush of shame. She'd lived in this building for 2 years and barely knew her neighbors. Okay, here's what I propose, Frank said, falling naturally into a leadership role that no one seemed inclined to challenge. We split into teams. Carlos and I will secure the back entrance and check the lower floors. Elena and Patricia will check this floor and the one above. David and Maria will inventory what we have here and set up a watch rotation. Sarah, you should rest. You look exhausted, and you took a risk letting us in. We owe you. Sarah wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her with a wave of fatigue. She'd been running on adrenaline for days. Okay. But be careful. Something tried my door last night. The group set out on their tasks, and Sarah found herself sitting on her couch with Maria, who was making lists in a small notebook she'd pulled from her backpack. Frank was military, Maria said quietly. Army. 2 tours overseas. Patricia was a nurse. Carlos is a contractor, he knows buildings, structures. Elena taught high school science. David's pre-med. And me, I'm an accountant. Not very useful in the apocalypse. Organization is useful, Sarah said. Knowing what we have, what we need. That's survival. Maria gave her a small smile. What about you? Graphic designer. Also not very apocalypse-friendly. You're creative. You solve problems visually. That'll matter too. Maria paused. Do you have family out there? Sarah's throat tightened. My parents and brother. I can't reach them. You? My mother. She's in a care facility in Southeast. I don't know if... Maria's voice cracked, and she didn't finish. They sat in silence for a moment, sharing grief for people who might already be gone. The door opened, and Elena and Patricia returned with Mr. Patterson between them. He was thin and frail, probably in his 80s, but his eyes were sharp. Miss Chen, he said with a formal nod. Thank you for the daily check-ins. And for this rescue. My supplies were running low. We found 2 other survivors, Elena reported. A couple in 5G, barricaded pretty well. They're going to stay put for now but appreciated knowing we're here. And we found one apartment that... She hesitated. The door was broken in. Signs of struggle. We secured it as best we could. No one asked about bodies. No one wanted to know. Frank and Carlos returned with similar news. Back entrance is now blocked with a dumpster we tipped over. Won't stop everything, but it'll slow things down. Found evidence of infected on the first floor, broken windows, blood, but the building seems clear now. Then we fortify and wait, Frank said. This is our stronghold. We defend it, we survive in it, and we hope that someone out there is working on fixing this. Night fell again, the second night of this new world. But this time, Sarah wasn't alone. They established a watch rotation, 2 people at a time, 4-hour shifts, monitoring the windows and the door. They rationed the food carefully. Frank estimated they had maybe 3 days with 7 people, longer if they were willing to be uncomfortable. We'll need to scavenge, Elena said. The apartments that are empty, stores nearby. But not yet. Let's get organized first, understand our environment. Sarah took the first watch with David. They sat in the dark living room, one at the window, one by the door, speaking in whispers. Are you scared? David asked. Terrified, Sarah admitted. You? Yeah. But less than yesterday. Your mom was right, my mom, I mean, Elena. She kept saying we needed to find people, work together. I thought we should just hide, the four of us. But this. He gestured at the apartment, the groups sleeping in various corners. This feels more like we might actually make it. A sound outside made them both freeze. Moaning, low and constant. The infected were still out there, wandering through the darkness. But in here, there was light. Not from bulbs or screens, but from something more fundamental. The light of humanity refusing to go gentle into that good night. Sarah felt it kindling in her chest, not quite hope, not yet. But something close. The determination to survive, to help these people survive, to prove that the world might be broken but the human spirit wasn't. We'll make it, she told David, surprised to find she halfway believed it. He smiled at her through the darkness. Yeah. We will. Dawn broke on day 5 with a thick fog rolling in from the Willamette River, turning the city into a landscape of gray shadows and muffled sounds. Sarah stood at the window during her second watch shift, this time paired with Patricia, observing the transformed world below. It's quieter this morning, Patricia observed, her nurse's instinct for assessment evident in her tone. Yesterday at this time, we could hear them constantly. Today, listen. Sarah held her breath. Patricia was right. The moaning had faded to occasional distant echoes. The street below remained empty, visibility limited to maybe 30 feet in the fog. Maybe they migrate, Sarah suggested. Follow sound or movement to other areas. Or maybe they're getting slower, Patricia said thoughtfully. Without food or water, even if they don't need it to survive, the body has to deteriorate eventually. But that's speculation. We don't know enough. Frank emerged from the bedroom where he'd been sleeping, fully alert despite having just woken up. Military training, Sarah assumed. Morning report? Quiet, Patricia said. Unusually so. Frank joined them at the window, studying the fog-shrouded street. That's either very good or very bad. Could be our window for a supply run. He turned to Sarah. You know this neighborhood. What's nearby that might still have supplies? Sarah mentally mapped the area. There's a convenience store 2 blocks east. A pharmacy 3 blocks north. The coffee shop downstairs might have some food in back. And... She hesitated. There are other apartments in this building. If people evacuated or didn't make it, their supplies are just sitting there. The apartments first, Frank decided. Close, controllable, less exposure to outside threats. We'll need to do this carefully. Sarah, wake the others. We need a team meeting. 20 minutes later, all 7 survivors gathered in Sarah's living room, sharing a breakfast of crackers and canned fruit, a luxury they all knew couldn't last. We have maybe 2 days of food left, Maria reported from her inventory list. Water for 3 if we're careful. We can't wait any longer. Agreed, Frank said. Here's what I propose. We search the building first, only the apartments we're certain are empty or where the occupants clearly aren't coming back. We go in teams of 3. One team searches, the other stands guard here. Elena, Carlos, and I will take the first search. David, you're in charge of the stronghold while we're gone. Patricia, Maria, Sarah, you're backup and defenders. David straightened, clearly taking the responsibility seriously despite his youth. How do we communicate if something goes wrong? Whistles, Elena said, pulling out 2 small referee whistles from her bag. 1 blast means all clear. 2 means possible danger. 3 means emergency, everyone converges or evacuates depending on the situation. What's the search protocol? Carlos asked. Frank's expression grew serious. We knock first. Announce ourselves. Give anyone inside a chance to respond. If there's no answer, we listen at the door for movement. If it's silent, we check if it's locked. If it's open or we can open it safely, we sweep the apartment, quick visual, make sure there's no infected inside. If it's clear, we gather only essentials, food, water, medicine, batteries, useful tools. We don't take personal items, photos, jewelry, anything that makes us looters instead of survivors. Understood? Everyone nodded. Sarah felt the weight of what they were about to do. These were their neighbors' homes. But their neighbors were gone, and the living needed to survive. The search team prepared to move out. Frank had the crowbar, Carlos a heavy wrench from his tool belt, Elena a kitchen knife. Not much, but better than nothing. Be careful, Maria told Carlos, squeezing his hand. Always, mi amor. They slipped out into the hallway, and the door closed behind them with a soft click that seemed thunderous in the tense silence. Sarah, Patricia, David, Maria, and Mr. Patterson waited. The old man had positioned himself by the window with a pair of binoculars he'd retrieved from his apartment, keeping watch on the street. The others stayed near the door, listening. Minutes crawled by. Sarah checked her phone, 8:47 a.m. Still no messages from her family. The battery was down to 23%. She'd been charging it sparingly using a portable battery pack, but that was nearly depleted too. A single whistle blast echoed faintly through the building. All clear. First apartment must be secure, David said, relaxing slightly. They waited. 15 minutes later, another single blast. This is good, Patricia said. Systematic and safe. Frank knows what he's doing. The third apartment took longer. 20 minutes passed with no whistle. Then 30. David was pacing now. That's too long. Something's wrong. Give them 5 more minutes, Patricia counseled. Could be a bigger apartment, more to search. But at 35 minutes, they heard it, 2 sharp whistle blasts. Possible danger. Everyone ready, David said, grabbing the baseball bat. Sarah, stay with Mr. Patterson. Patricia, Maria, with me. Wait, Mr. Patterson called from the window. Movement below. 3 infected, coming from the east. The whistle might have attracted them. Sarah's heart sank. Sound attracted them. The whistle, their communication method, had just announced their presence to every infected in range. David made a quick decision. New plan. We can't let them know which floor we're on. Maria, go to the stairwell, listen for the team. If they're coming back, guide them in quickly and silently. Patricia, help Mr. Patterson watch all approaches. Sarah, get anything we can use as a weapon. Sarah ran to the kitchen, pulling out a heavy cast iron pan, a meat tenderizer, a cheese grater, anything that could be used to defend. Her hands were shaking again, but her mind was clear. The fear was there, but so was determination. The apartment door burst open, and Elena rushed in, followed by Carlos supporting Frank, whose face was pale and tight with pain. Close it, Elena hissed. David slammed the door shut and engaged all the locks. What happened? 5th floor, apartment 5D, Carlos panted. The door was open. We thought it was empty. But there was one inside, in the bedroom. It came at us fast. Frank fought it off, but it didn't bite me, Frank interrupted firmly, though his voice was strained. Show them, Elena. Elena held up Frank's jacket. There was a tear in the sleeve, and underneath, his shirt was ripped. But when he rolled up his sleeve, his skin was unmarked except for a blooming bruise. It grabbed me, tried to bite, but the jacket took it, Frank explained. Carlos got it off me before it could do more. Got it off you how? Patricia asked sharply, her nurse's assessment already in motion as she examined Frank's arm. Wrench, Carlos said quietly. Headshot. It stopped moving. The room fell silent. They'd known it was a possibility, that they might have to fight, to defend themselves lethally. But knowing and doing were different things. Are you certain it didn't break the skin? Patricia asked Frank. Any scratches, any fluid contact at all? I'm certain. You can check me every hour if you need to. But I'm not infected. Frank's voice was steady, but Sarah could see the fear underneath. He knew what would happen if they doubted him. We'll monitor you, Patricia decided. Check for fever, behavioral changes. But Frank, if you feel anything, you'll be the first to know. I'm not going to turn into one of those things and hurt anyone here. Did you get any supplies before? David trailed off. Elena held up 2 backpacks. 3 apartments cleared. We hit a small jackpot in 5B, apparently someone was a prepper. Canned goods, bottled water, even a camping stove with fuel. 5C had medications, first aid supplies. 5D had. She paused. Had some supplies, but we grabbed what we could and got out once the infected showed up. They emptied the backpacks onto the table. It was a treasure trove, 12 cans of soup, 8 bottles of water, 6 boxes of crackers, peanut butter, rice, dried beans, a manual can opener, batteries, a real flashlight, bandages, antibiotics, pain medication, and the camping stove. This buys us at least another week, Maria calculated. Maybe 2 if we're careful. What about the infected you fought? Mr. Patterson asked. Is it still in 5D? No, Carlos said. It's contained. We shut it in the bathroom, blocked the door. We can deal with it later if we need to, but it can't get out to threaten us now. Sarah noticed he'd changed his story from got it off me to contained it, and she understood. Carlos had done what was necessary, but he didn't want to say it explicitly. Maybe couldn't say it. From outside, the moaning started up again, louder than before. The infected below had definitely heard the whistle. How many? Frank asked, moving to the window despite Patricia's protests. Mr. Patterson peered through his binoculars. 7 now. No, 8. They're converging from different directions. The fog's lifting, David observed. They'll be able to see the building clearly soon. Can they break in? Maria asked. The front entrance, the back? Eventually, Frank said. If enough of them push against the glass, it'll give. The back is more secure with the dumpster, but the front? He considered. We should reinforce it. Use furniture from empty apartments to create a barricade inside the lobby. Make it so even if they break the glass, they can't get through. That means going back out there, Elena said. Past 5D. I'll go, Carlos volunteered immediately. Not alone, Frank said. Carlos, David, and me. Quick trip. We grab a couch or heavy dresser from one of the cleared apartments, take it downstairs, position it, come back. 10 minutes, maximum. Patricia looked like she wanted to protest but recognized the necessity. Take the antibiotics with you. If something happens and you get cut on debris, you'll want them immediately. The second team prepared to move out. Sarah felt helpless watching them go. She wasn't physically strong enough to move furniture, wasn't trained for this kind of operation. Her skills, design, creativity, problem-solving, felt useless in this new world of immediate physical threats. But as the door closed behind the men, she had an idea. Patricia, do we have any paper? Markers? In my bag. Why? Sarah was already moving, thinking out loud. We need a communication system that doesn't make noise. Hand signals are good, but only if we can see each other. What if we create signal cards? Simple symbols we can hold up to communicate across distances or through windows. Elena's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. Yes. What symbols? They worked quickly, Sarah's design skills finally finding purpose. She created simple, clear symbols on pieces of torn notebook paper. A check mark for all clear, an X for danger, a question mark for status check, an arrow for move or go, a hand for stop or stay, a number system using fingers for counting infected. We can make copies, give sets to everyone, Maria said, already organizing the cards. And we can expand the system as we need to. It took 8 minutes for the men to return, breathing hard but successful. Couch is blocking the front entrance, David reported. Tested it ourselves. Even if they break the glass, they'll have to climb over it, and that'll slow them down significantly. Through the window, they could all see the infected gathered at the front entrance now. 9 of them, pressed against the glass, hands slapping against the surface. But the glass held, and the barricade behind it was invisible to them. They'd keep trying, Sarah knew, but at least for now, the building was secure. Over the next 3 days, they settled into a routine. Watch rotations. Careful rationing. Physical exercise to maintain strength. And planning. Frank had them all training in basic self-defense. I know this seems paranoid, he said on day 7 as he demonstrated how to properly grip a weapon, but we need to be prepared. Not just for infected. Resources are getting scarce. People are getting desperate. We might face threats from other survivors. It was a grim thought, but Sarah recognized the truth in it. The society they'd known had collapsed in less than a week. The rules that had governed behavior were gone. Now it was just survival. But their group proved that survival didn't have to mean savagery. They shared everything equally. Made decisions collectively. Looked out for each other. Mr. Patterson turned out to be a wealth of knowledge about old-school survival skills, how to purify water, how to preserve food, how to create simple tools. When you get to be my age, he said with a slight smile, you remember a time before everything was easy. Those skills have value again. Elena and David worked on securing additional apartments, creating potential fallback positions if they needed to evacuate their main stronghold. They also scavenged more supplies, always working in teams, always careful. Patricia established a medical station in Sarah's bathroom, organizing their growing collection of first aid supplies and medications. We're lucky no one's gotten seriously sick or injured yet, she said. But that luck won't hold forever. We need to be ready. Carlos reinforced doors and windows, creating additional barriers and escape routes. Defense in depth, he called it. Multiple layers of protection. Maria kept meticulous records of everything, supplies used, supplies remaining, daily events, observations about the infected. Someday, she said, someone might want to know what happened, how we survived. This documentation could save lives. And Sarah became their communications specialist and scout. She had a knack for reading the street, for anticipating patterns and how the infected moved. She created maps of the neighborhood, marking safe routes and danger zones based on their observations. On day 8, the power came back on. It happened at 3 p.m., sudden and shocking. Lights blazed, the refrigerator hummed to life, and for a moment, they all just stood there in surprise. Does this mean? Maria started. Doesn't mean anything yet, Frank cautioned. Could be automated systems, backup generators. Don't assume it means things are getting better. But they took advantage while they could. They charged every device, filled more containers with water while the pumps worked, turned on the television. Most channels were still dead or showing emergency broadcasts. But one, a local station, had live coverage. A reporter stood in what looked like a military camp, the Portland skyline visible in the background. Established a safe zone at Delta Park with support from the National Guard and FEMA, she was saying. Approximately 2,000 survivors are currently sheltering here, with more arriving daily. Army Corps of Engineers have established a secure perimeter, and medical teams are screening all new arrivals for infection. The camera panned to show rows of tents, supply trucks, armed soldiers maintaining watch positions. There's hope, David breathed. But Frank was frowning. Delta Park is 8 miles from here. Through the city. With thousands of infected between us and there. But if we could reach it, Elena said. Real shelter, food, water, medical care. We'd have to leave the stronghold we've built here, Carlos pointed out. No guarantee we'd make it. No guarantee they'd let us in once we arrived. It sparked a debate that lasted into the evening. Stay in their defendable position with limited supplies, or risk the journey to a potential sanctuary. They were still discussing it when Sarah's phone buzzed. She'd kept it off mostly, preserving battery, but turned it on periodically to check for messages. She had one new text message. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The message was from Tommy, her brother. It had been sent 2 hours ago, probably during a brief window when the cell networks functioned. Sarah. Mom, Dad and me safe. Eugene campus evac. Going to coast. Aunt Linda's beach house. If you get this, try to meet us. Lincoln City. I love you. T. Sarah's vision blurred with tears. They were alive. Her family was alive. What is it? Patricia asked gently. My family. They're alive. They're heading to the coast, to my aunt's beach house. She pulled up a map on her phone. Lincoln City was 90 miles west. In normal times, a 2-hour drive. Now? It might as well have been on another continent. We could make it, Elena said, looking at the map over Sarah's shoulder. Look, Highway 26 goes almost directly there. We'd need vehicles, supplies, a solid plan. But it's possible. You mean leave? David asked. All of us? Why not? Elena challenged. We've been thinking too small. Holding this building, surviving day by day. But that's not living, that's just existing. The coast, isolated communities, ocean resources, less population density means less infected. It could be a real chance. Lincoln City's probably full of survivors with the same idea, Frank cautioned. Could be dangerous for different reasons. Or it could be a real community, Carlos countered. People working together on a larger scale. Sarah looked around at the group, her group now, not just random people she'd let in. They'd become something more than survivors sharing space. They'd become a team. A family of sorts. I have to try to reach them, she said quietly. My family. I have to try. But I'm not asking any of you to risk yourselves for my family reunion. Don't be dense, David said with a slight smile. We're a team. We go together or we don't go at all. That's not fair to you, Sarah protested. Delta Park is closer, safer. Maybe, Patricia interrupted. Or maybe it's a crowded camp where disease spreads easily and resources are already strained. Maybe the coast is the better option. We won't know until we try. Vote, Frank said. Democratic decision. All in favor of staying here in the building, fortifying our position, and waiting for official rescue? No hands. All in favor of trying to reach Delta Park safe zone? Mr. Patterson raised his hand. Just him. All in favor of heading west to the coast, attempting to reach Lincoln City? 6 hands, including Mr. Patterson's this time. Unanimous for the coast, Frank confirmed. Then that's our mission. But we do this smart. We plan every detail. We prepare for contingencies. We don't leave until we're ready, and we don't take unnecessary risks. Agreed? Everyone agreed. They gave themselves 3 days to prepare, 3 days to transform from apartment-bound survivors into a mobile team capable of crossing 90 miles of zombie-infested territory. The first challenge was transportation. They needed a vehicle, preferably something large and durable. There's a parking garage 2 blocks south, Sarah said, studying her maps. Multi-level. It might have vehicles that are still functional. Might have infected too, Carlos pointed out. Parking garages are dark, enclosed. Perfect places for them to accumulate. We scout it first, Frank decided. Careful reconnaissance, no engagement unless absolutely necessary. The scouting team, Frank, Carlos, and Elena, left before dawn on day 9, moving through streets that had grown eerily quiet. They returned 3 hours later with cautiously optimistic news. "The garage is accessible," Elena reported. "We didn't do a full sweep, but the ground level has at least a dozen vehicles. There's a pickup truck that looks promising, high clearance, covered bed, half tank of gas according to what we could see through the window." "Infected presence?" David asked. "We saw 2 on the ground level, 4 or 5 on the second level. Manageable if we're smart about it." "What's the plan?" Patricia asked. Frank laid it out. "We create a distraction to draw the infected away from the ground level. Once they're clear, a small team moves in, hotwires the truck." "I can do that," Carlos interrupted. "Old skill from a misspent youth." Frank nodded. Carlos gets the truck started, drives it out. The rest of us provide cover and escape route. We bring the truck back here, load it with supplies and personnel, and we're mobile." "What kind of distraction?" Sarah asked. "Sound-based. We've seen they respond to noise. We set up something loud at one end of the garage, they converge on it, we work at the other end." They spent the day planning and gathering what they'd need. A battery-powered radio they could sacrifice for the distraction. Rope for emergency escape routes. Every weapon they had. Additional supplies scavenged from the building's cleared apartments. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Tomorrow, they'd leave the relative safety of the building for the exposure of the street. They'd face infected directly, intentionally. Everything could go wrong. She was standing at the window, watching the empty street below, when Elena joined her. "Can't sleep either?" Elena asked. "Too much adrenaline," Sarah admitted. "I keep running through everything that could go wrong." "So do I. But I also think about what could go right. We could get that truck. We could make it to the coast. You could see your family again." Elena paused. "David's father was stationed overseas. Military deployment. I don't know if he's alive, if he'll ever come home. But I know David and I are alive right now. And we have a chance to build something better than just hiding and surviving. That's worth the risk." Sarah nodded. "Thank you. For this. For agreeing to come. Thank you for letting us in that first day. You saved our lives. Now we save each other's. That's how this works." They moved out at first light on day 10. All 7 of them, working in coordinated teams. The street was cold and damp with morning fog, the sun a pale disk struggling to break through. Sarah's breath misted in front of her as she moved carefully down the sidewalk, every sense heightened. Frank led the way, with Carlos and Elena flanking. David and Maria followed, with Patricia and Sarah bringing up the rear. Mr. Patterson had stayed at the apartment. He was too frail for this kind of operation, but he'd position himself at the window with binoculars, their eyes in the sky. 2 blocks had never seemed so far. They moved in silence, communicating with hand signals and the cards Sarah had designed. Every car, every doorway, every alley was a potential threat. 1 block. They saw no infected. The absence was almost more unnerving than the presence would have been. 2 blocks. The parking garage loomed ahead, a concrete structure with gaping entrance mouths on 2 sides. Frank held up a hand. "Stop." He pointed to himself and Carlos, then to the east entrance. Pointed to Elena and David, then to the west entrance. The distraction team and the extraction team. Sarah, Maria, and Patricia were support, watching their backs, ready to help whichever team needed it. Frank and Carlos disappeared into the east entrance. Sarah counted heartbeats, trying to stay calm. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Then, echoing through the concrete structure, music. The radio, turned up to maximum volume, playing a jazz station that had somehow stayed on the air. The effect was immediate. From inside the garage, the moaning started. Shadows moved, converging on the sound. Elena and David went in from the west. Sarah stood with Maria and Patricia, eyes scanning the street, the windows above, anywhere a threat might come from. Her hands gripped the heavy flashlight she designated as her weapon. Not ideal, but better than nothing. From inside the garage, the sounds of the infected grew louder, more frantic. They were gathering around the radio, just as planned. Come on, Sarah thought. Get the truck. Get out. An engine roared to life. The sweetest sound Sarah had ever heard. But then, shouts. A scream. The crash of metal on metal. Something's wrong, Patricia said. Before they could move, an infected burst from the garage entrance, not one of the slow, shambling ones, but something different. It moved fast, almost running, its eyes locked on the street where the three women stood. Move! Maria yelled. They scattered. The infected went for Sarah, the closest target. She swung the flashlight, connected with its shoulder. It barely slowed. Hands reached for her, and she could see the veins dark under pale skin, could smell the decay. A wrench flew past her head and struck the infected square in the temple. It dropped, and Carlos was there, grabbing Sarah's arm. Run! To the truck! A pickup truck, battered blue, with a covered bed, screeched out of the garage. Elena was driving, David in the passenger seat. The back cargo cover was open. Get in! Get in! David shouted. Carlos practically threw Sarah into the truck bed, then helped Maria and Patricia in. Frank appeared from the garage entrance, running flat out, 3 infected behind him. Go, go, he shouted. But Elena waited, and as Frank reached the truck, he grabbed the side rail and hauled himself up and over into the bed with the others. Only then did Elena gun the engine. The truck lurched forward, and the infected chasing Frank stumbled, unable to match the acceleration. But more were emerging from the garage now, drawn by the engine noise, the shouting. Hold on! Elena yelled from the cab. The truck took a corner too fast, and Sarah grabbed the side rail to keep from being thrown. The wind whipped her hair as they accelerated down the street, putting distance between them and the garage. She looked back. A dozen infected were in the street now, all moving in their direction, but falling farther behind with each second. Is everyone okay? Frank demanded, doing a quick visual check of the people in the truck bed. Nods all around. Shaken, scared, but uninjured. What happened in there? Patricia asked. We heard crashing. Fast one, Carlos panted. We've been seeing the slow ones mostly, but this thing moved like it was still alive. It came at David while he was watching for the slow ones. Knocked over a shelf, made a huge noise. The distraction stopped working, they all came toward us instead. But we got the truck, David said, and despite everything, he was grinning. We actually got the truck. Elena pulled over 3 blocks from their building, in a spot with good visibility in all directions. She and David climbed out of the cab. Everyone accounted for? Elena asked. No bites, no scratches. They checked each other, and miraculously, everyone was clean. We got lucky, Frank said seriously. That fast one could have ended this mission before it started. We need to remember, these things are changing, adapting, or maybe the virus affects different people differently. We can't assume they'll all be slow and predictable. Noted, Carlos said. But we have a vehicle now. That's a huge win. They drove the truck back to their building, parking it in the alley behind. There was a tense moment when they had to clear 2 infected from the back entrance, but working together, they managed it without incident. By noon, they were back in Sarah's apartment, exhausted but triumphant. We rest today, Frank announced. Tomorrow, we finish gathering supplies and prep the truck. The day after, we leave for the coast. Day 12 dawned clear and cold. The truck was loaded with everything they'd scavenged: food, water, medical supplies, weapons, tools, blankets, and spare fuel and jerry cans Carlos had found. 7 people prepared to leave the stronghold that had kept them safe for nearly 2 weeks. Mr. Patterson was quiet, methodical, packing a single bag with his essentials. Are you sure about this? Sarah asked him. It's going to be dangerous. If you wanted to stay here, wait for official rescue. The old man smiled at her. Miss Chen, I'm 83 years old. I've lived through wars, recessions, personal tragedies. I'm not going to spend what might be my last days hiding in a building waiting to die. I'm going to spend them with people I've come to care about, trying to reach a place of beauty and peace. If I die along the way, well, there are worse ways to go. They did a final check of the truck. Elena would drive first shift, with Frank navigating and riding shotgun. The others would ride in the covered bed, which provided some protection and concealment. Once we're on Highway 26, it should be more straightforward, Frank said, studying the map. But getting out of the city is going to be the hardest part. We stick to smaller streets, avoid downtown, avoid anywhere we see large groups of infected. Speed and stealth, we're not trying to fight through, we're trying to slip past. What if we encounter other survivors? David asked. We assess case by case, Frank said. If they need help and we can provide it without endangering ourselves, we do. If they're hostile, we evade. We don't take unnecessary risks, but we don't lose our humanity either. At 8 a.m., they piled into the truck. Sarah took one last look at the apartment that had been her home, then her fortress, then her launching point into this new world. The truck's engine started with a reassuring rumble. Elena put it in gear, and they rolled out of the alley into the street. The journey to the coast had begun. They made good progress initially, winding through residential neighborhoods that seemed almost normal except for the absence of people. Abandoned cars lined the streets, but the roads were mostly passable. Then they heard it, a radio broadcast, crackling through the truck's speakers. Elena had been scanning frequencies, hoping for useful information. All survivors in the Portland metro area, this is the Delta Park safe zone. We are accepting new arrivals at the north and east gates. Screening protocols are in place. Bring identification if possible, minimal supplies. We have food, water, and medical care. Repeat, this is Delta Park safe zone. They're still operational, David said. That's good, right? Means some organization still exists. But Sarah was watching through the truck's rear window as they passed a cross street that offered a view toward Delta Park in the distance. She could see smoke rising, hear sirens. Frank, she called toward the cab. Something's happening at Delta Park. Frank grabbed binoculars and looked. His expression darkened. Change of plans. Elena, take the next left. We need to avoid that area. What did you see? Carlos asked. Activity. Could be nothing, could be the safe zone being overrun. Either way, we're not getting close enough to find out. It was a reminder that there were no guarantees, no truly safe places. Only safer ones. They drove on, and the city slowly gave way to suburbs, then to more rural areas. The highway entrance appeared ahead, Highway 26 west, toward the coast. So far, so good, Elena called back. How's everyone doing? A chorus of affirmatives. They were scared, uncomfortable in the bouncing truck bed, but alive and moving forward. Sarah pulled out her phone, which she'd charged fully before they left. Still no new messages, but she pulled up the old one from Tommy, reading it again. If you get this, try to meet us. Lincoln City. I'm trying, Tommy, she thought. I'm trying. The highway stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt leading west through forests and mountains toward the ocean. Toward hope. Toward family. Toward whatever came next. They'd been on Highway 26 for 3 hours when they encountered their first real obstacle, a massive pileup blocking all lanes about 30 miles outside the city. Cars had collided and been abandoned, creating an impassable maze of metal. Some of the vehicles had bodies inside, and Sarah forced herself not to look too closely. We'll have to go around, Frank said. There's a service road marked on the map, should run parallel for a few miles. As they carefully navigated onto the smaller road, movement caught Sarah's eye. Not infected, children. 2 kids, maybe 8 and 10 years old, peeking out from behind an overturned RV. Stop! Sarah called. There are kids. Elena braked, and everyone tensed. This could be a trap, could be bait for an ambush. But they could also be two terrified children who needed help. Frank grabbed one of the whistles. If this goes sideways, 3 blasts and we evacuate immediately. He climbed out of the truck, hands visible and empty. We're not going to hurt you, he called to the children. Are you alone? Are your parents here? The older child, a girl with tangled blonde hair, stepped out cautiously. Our dad's sick. In the RV. He said to hide from strangers, but please, do you have medicine? Patricia was already moving. I'm a nurse. Can I see your father? The girl nodded, and Patricia, Frank, and Sarah approached the RV while the others stayed with the truck, weapons ready. Inside the RV, a man lay on a couch, his face flushed with fever. But when Sarah got closer, she saw no bite marks, no signs of infection. Just regular sickness. Flu, probably, Patricia assessed after a quick examination. Fever of 102, dehydrated, but not infected. He needs fluids, fever reducers, and rest. They gave the family supplies, water, medicine, some food. The father, name of Robert, was conscious enough to be grateful. We were trying to reach the coast, he said weakly. Heard it might be safer. But the pileup stopped us, and then I got sick. We're heading to Lincoln City, Frank said. We can't take you with us, not enough room, and moving you while you're sick could make it worse. But the RV is defensible. Stay here, let the medicine work. Once you're stronger, try to go around the pileup, keep heading west. Sarah added, if you make it to Lincoln City, ask for the Chen family at Linda Chen's beach house. If we're there, we'll help you. The girl hugged Sarah impulsively. Thank you. Everyone else just drove past. You stopped. As they returned to the truck, David voiced what others were thinking. We could have taken them. Made room somehow. No, Patricia said gently. Moving someone that sick, cramming more people into an already full truck, risking exposure to flu on top of everything else, it would have endangered all of us and not helped him. We did what we could. It was a hard truth, survival sometimes meant making choices that felt wrong. But as Sarah climbed back into the truck bed, she felt something that had been missing, proof that humanity could still shine through, even in darkness. They'd stopped. They'd helped. They'd stayed human. The journey continued. Through small towns that looked untouched by chaos and others that showed signs of struggle. Past wandering infected and once, a group of survivors in a fortified gas station who waved but didn't approach. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the landscape changed. The air smelled different, salt and sea. Through gaps in the trees, Sarah caught glimpses of blue water stretching to infinity. The Pacific Ocean. They'd made it. Lincoln City, 10 miles, Frank called back from reading a highway sign. Sarah's heart raced. 10 miles from potential reunion. From seeing her parents and brother again. From finding out if the beach house was really safe, or if this had all been a hope built on wishful thinking. The truck crested a hill, and the full coastal town spread out below them. Lincoln City looked remarkably intact, buildings standing, no fires, no obvious signs of destruction. Could be they evacuated early, Carlos suggested. Small coastal town, they might have had time to organize. As they descended into town, they saw signs of life. Not many people, but some, figures moving between buildings, a checkpoint of some kind set up at an intersection. Elena slowed as they approached the checkpoint. 2 men with hunting rifles stepped out, their postures defensive but not immediately hostile. State your business, one called. Frank leaned out the truck window. We're looking for family. The Chen family, Linda Chen's beach house. We mean no harm. The guards exchanged glances. You're looking for the doctor? Sarah's heart leaped. She scrambled to the truck cab. Doctor? My mother's a doctor, Emily Chen. Is she here? The guard's expression softened slightly. Your family. Chen Group's been helping out at the community center, treating sick folks. Dokchin said she had a daughter in Portland. That you? Yes. Yes, Sarachin. My brother Tommy, my father. They're here. All three of them. The guard lowered his rifle. Welcome to Lincoln City. Follow Ocean Drive north about 2 miles. Big blue house right on the beach. You can't miss it. Sarah couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. They were here. They were alive. The truck rolled through town, and Sarah saw what these survivors had built. Gardens being planted. Solar panels being installed. Children playing under watchful guard. Not paradise, not by a long shot, but something resembling organized survival. And then, there it was, Aunt Linda's beach house, a sprawling blue structure with wide windows facing the ocean. And standing on the front porch, as if she'd been watching for them, was Sarah's mother. Elena stopped the truck, and Sarah didn't wait. She jumped out, running across the sand-dusted driveway, and her mother met her halfway. They collided in an embrace that felt like coming home, like the world settling back into place. You made it, her mother sobbed. You made it. So did you, Sarah managed. Mom, I thought, I was so scared. I know, baby. I know. But we're here now. We're together. Her father and Tommy emerged from the house, and then it was all of them, holding on to each other as if they could prevent the world from tearing them apart again through sheer force of will. Finally, Sarah pulled back, wiping her eyes. Mom, Dad, Tommy, I need you to meet some people. People who saved my life and who I traveled 90 miles with. They're my family now too. She turned to find her group standing by the truck, giving her family space for their reunion but watching with expressions that mixed happiness with a touch of uncertainty. Sarah walked back and took Elena's hand, then David's. Everyone, this is my family. Family, this is everyone. And we're all going to survive this together. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood on the beach at sunset, watching the waves roll in with a consistency that felt miraculous in a world where everything else had changed. Lincoln City had become home to nearly 300 survivors, organized under a council that included Sarah's mother, Frank, and several longtime residents. They'd established security protocols, farming initiatives, water purification systems, and a school for the children. The infected were still out there, small groups sometimes wandered near the perimeter, and scouts reported larger hordes in the inland cities. But the coastal community had built something worth defending. Sarah's role had evolved from graphic designer to communications coordinator and scout trainer. Her maps and signal systems had been adopted throughout the community. The creativity she thought useless in the apocalypse had found new purpose. Frank and Carlos had fortified the town's borders. Patricia ran the medical clinic alongside Sarah's mother. Elena had organized the education system. David was training to become a medic. Maria managed supplies and logistics. Mr. Patterson taught survival skills to anyone who'd listen, beloved by children who called him grandfather. And the family, Robert and his children? They'd arrived 2 weeks after Sarah's group, thinner and tired but alive. Robert's skills as an electrician had proven invaluable in maintaining the solar power systems. It wasn't easy. They'd lost people, some to infected, some to sickness, some to accidents. Resources were always tight. Tensions flared over decisions and priorities. The infected threat remained constant. But they were alive. They were together. They were building something. Tommy appeared beside Sarah on the beach. Council meeting in an hour. They want to discuss the Portland expedition. Some survivors from Portland had reported that the Delta Park safe zone had stabilized, and there was talk of establishing a trade route between the coast and the city. Dangerous, complex, but potentially valuable. I'll be there, Sarah said. Her brother studied her. You've changed. Gotten stronger. So have you. He smiled. Yeah. Weird what the end of the world does to a person. His expression grew serious. Sarah, do you think we'll ever get back to normal? Real normal, like before? Sarah looked out at the ocean, thought about everything they'd been through, everyone they'd lost, and everyone they'd found. No, she said honestly. I don't think we'll ever get back to what was. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we can build something better. Something where we remember what matters: family, community, helping each other survive. Not just survive, but live. The sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. In the town behind them, lights were coming on, solar-powered, carefully rationed, but lights nonetheless. Proof that darkness hadn't won. Sarachan had started this journey alone and terrified, barricaded in an apartment while the world collapsed around her. She'd found allies who became family, had crossed dangerous miles to reach sanctuary, and had helped build a community from the ashes of the old world. The streets still whispered danger. The infected still walked. The future remained uncertain. But tomorrow would come, as it always did. And when it did, Sarah and her people would be ready to face it together. The human spirit, it turned out, was harder to destroy than anyone had imagined. And in a world of shambling dead things, that resilience was the greatest survival tool of all.